Hello guys, welcome to our new video, and in today's video I'll be discussing the chapter 6, chapter 7, and your chapter 8 as promised in my previous video that I had. So stay tuned. I'll be discussing these chapters because I think some of you are trying to get the exam very soon. So I will upload as many videos as I can because I'm only doing this every weekend and during my spare time, because actually I'm also doing the actual coding and billing during the weekdays. So it's really my passion to teach guys, so that's why I'm uploading videos to help everyone to enter the medical coding and the medical billing industry. So for today's video, I'll discuss chapter 6, again 7, and your chapter 8. So let's start with your chapter 6, diseases of the nervous system. So I remember one question I think for chapter 6 when I took my exam with CPC. So it's very important to also know the guidelines for your chapter 6. So the first guideline there is your dominant/non-dominant side. So remember, the common example most of the time is your when we encounter like conditions like cerebrovascular accident. Now the complication of there is like hemiplegia or hemiparesis, like that, or left-sided weakness or right-sided weakness. So in order for us to code them properly, we need to know the dominant and the non-dominant sides of the patients. Now in this guideline, the first guideline, code for from category G81, hemiplegia and hemiparesis, and subcategories G83.1, monoplegia of the lower limb, G83.2, monoplegia of the upper limb, G83.3, monoplegia of unspecified, it's either if it's the upper or the lower. Identify whether the dominant or non-dominant side is affected. Okay, remember guys, the codes are differentiated depending if it's a dominant or non-dominant side of the patient. So I have an example here. As I mentioned in the guideline category G81, so I get some example for G81, like for example G81.01, flaccid hemiplegia affecting the right dominant side. Okay, G81.2, flaccid hemiplegia affecting the left dominant side. G81.03, flaccid hemiplegia affecting the right non-dominant side. And G81.04, flaccid hemiplegia affecting the left non-dominant side. So as you can see in those examples that I have, it is differentiated depending of course in the laterality, if it's right or left, and also differentiated depending if it's the dominant or the non-dominant side of the patients. When we say dominant and non-dominant, like for example if you're right-sided, okay, right-handed rather, if you're guys, you have your dominant side most of the time. Like if you want to write, you're using your right hand. If you want to or you're using your left hand. If you're holding a knife, it can be a left-handed or it can be a right-handed, like that. So remember, if the affected side after a stroke, so the complications there is your hemiplegia or hemiparesis or left-sided or right-sided weakness. Now we need to know if the right side or the left side is the dominant side or the non-dominant side of the patients. For example, the physician documented a left-sided weakness and the patient is right-handed. Okay, so left-sided is affected and the patient is right-handed. That means the patient's dominant side is the right side because she or he is right-handed. Now the affected side is the left, meaning the left side is the non-dominant side. Okay, so what if the patient suffered a right-sided weakness and the patient is right-handed? So we can say that the dominant side of the patient is the right because she or he is right-handed. And the affected side is the right side, meaning the affected side is also the dominant side. Okay, so in the documentation, they will, and most of the time they will tell you if it's right-handed, left-handed, like that. Okay, but what if there's no documentation of being right-handed, there's no documentation of being left-handed, like that, and or they verbatimly say that it is right, it's right dominant side, the right is the dominant side, and the left is the dominant side. So that's very helpful if they will document that. But what if there's no documentation of being the dominant or the non-dominant side? The only documented side, the only documentation that I have or that we have is the affected side. What if the medical record or the documentation only tells you the affected side and there's no documentation at all of if it's a non-dominant or if it's a dominant side? So that's the problem. Now here comes the guideline in your, we are still on letter A, the guideline. Should the affected side be documented? So we only have the affected side if it's either the right or the left, but not specified as dominant or non-dominant side. Okay? So it was not specified as at all that it is a dominant or non-dominant side. And the classification system does not indicate a default. Okay, so we don't have a default here. We can just like, we cannot just put like unspecified like that. So code selection is as follows as per the guideline. For ambidextrous patients, the default should be dominant always. Even if it's the right side or the left side is affected, we always consider both sides as dominant. Because for ambidextrous patients, remember, they can use both left and right, like that. So both sides are dominant. Okay, so for ambidextrous patients, we don't have any choice. So it's either, even if the left side is the affected or even if the right side is affected, it's considered the dominant side of the patients because we cannot choose because both sides are dominant. There are patients like that. Okay, but if the left side that is affected, the default is always non-dominant. And then should I proceed for the next? If the right side is affected, the default is dominant. Okay, so he's the opposite. Even if, like, there's no documentation of dominant or non-dominant side, if the right side is affected, automatic we will consider that as dominant side. But if the left side is affected, it is considered, and there's no documentation of being dominant or non-dominant, the default is always the left side as a non-dominant side. Because remember that the rationale here is most individual or most persons are right-handed. We just, when based on the statistics, a lot is right-handed and a few are, and based on the statistic, right-handed is higher compared to left-handed patients. So that's why they put in the right side as always the default and the left side is the non-dominant side. Okay? That is your guideline number 1. Now, I haven't encountered any question about this, but it's very important. It's very nice to know, guys. So don't skip this guideline. Common example that I encounter, or common exam questions that I encounter is in the next guideline, your pain, category G89. This is a common question, and a lot of students having mistake in coding this. Even in the production, actually, I encountered a lot for G89. So, general coding information for pain. Remember, a lot of patients coming into the clinic due to pain. Remember, especially if it's no longer tolerable. So, that's the main reason why the patient came into the office or to the emergency room, emergency department most of the time, or the urgent care center. So, it's very important for you guys to know these guidelines because when you're doing the actual production and even in the exam, they love to ask about your G89. Okay, so if the pain is not specified as acute or chronic, post-thoracotomy, post-procedural, or neoplasm related, do not assign codes from category G89, pain not elsewhere classified. Okay, so what do you mean by that? Now, I think the statement in the guideline is a double negative statement. So when we have double negative, the result is positive. So I'll just put in the positive explanation about this. You can only, the opposite, you can only code G89 if you see in the diagnosis the word acute or chronic pain, post-thoracotomy pain, post-procedural pain, or neoplasm-related pain. So that's the opposite, because you cannot code them without those words. Okay? Okay. So if you cannot see those words, as per the guideline, do not assign G89. But if you see those words like acute or chronic, post-thoracotomy, post-procedural, or neoplasm-related, you can code G89. So every time you see a code in the choices like G89, look at in the scenario or in the diagnosis statement of the provider if there's a word like acute or chronic pain, post-thoracotomy pain, post-procedural pain, or neoplasm related before you can use G89. So common example here, for example, low back pain. The diagnosis is low back pain. Should I use G89? No, because there's no word like acute or chronic, post-thoracotomy, post-procedural, or neoplasm related pain. But if the documentation says acute low back pain or chronic low back pain, should I use G89? Yes, because there's a word like acute or chronic. So in the exam, most of the time, you will be left with two options. Like choice letter C, G89 plus the code for low back pain M54.5, for example, C, and the letter D is M54.5 only, low back pain. Okay, now you can see in the scenario that there's the word acute low back pain or chronic low back pain, so meaning you need to use G89, eliminate letter D. The correct answer is letter C. Okay? A code from category G89 should not be assigned if underlying definitive diagnosis is known, obviously, and the reason for encounter is pain control, management, and not management of the underlying conditions. Okay. When we say when you see the definition of G89, pain not elsewhere classified, so it's just like it's vague. It's a general code. Now, if we have an underlying or definitive diagnosis, which is the main reason for encounters, we should, unless the reason for encounter is pain management, we should not use G89 because remember, we already have the definitive diagnosis that is available. Okay? When an admission or encounter is for the procedure aimed at treating the underlying condition, as a code from the underlying condition should be assigned as the principal diagnosis, and no code from G89 should be assigned. The bottom line here is, if the main reason is for the treatment of the underlying condition, and we already know the underlying conditions, or we already know the definitive diagnosis, why the patient came in, code the underlying condition, and you should not use G89. Okay? Because G89 is vague, or it's a general term, rather. Pain not elsewhere classified, or that is pain unspecified. Okay? So if we already have the definitive, code the definitive, except if the reason for encounter is for pain control or pain management, which is related to the next guideline that I have in the selection of your principal or first listed diagnosis. Okay? So let's start with your category G89 codes as principal or first listed diagnosis. Again, in the exam, they love to ask about your sequencing, guys. So category G89 codes are acceptable as principal diagnoses are first listed when the reason for encounter is for pain control or for pain management. Keep in mind, if the main reason for encounter is for pain control and for pain management, and there's the word like acute chronic pain, chronic pain rather, post-procedural pain, post-thoracotomy pain, neoplasm related pain, you need to code first G89. Okay? Another, when a patient is admitted for the insertion of neurostimulator for pain control, again, this is for pain control because the purpose of your neurostimulator is for pain control. Okay? So even if they say that the patient came in for neurostimulator, it is automatic that the purpose of that is for pain control. Code first G89. So a very important note in your book should be, if the reason for encounter is pain control or pain management, G89 first. Okay? Next, use of category G89 codes in conjunction with a site-specific pain codes. In this guideline, remember, your G89 pain unspecified or not elsewhere classified. And there's also a specific pain codes available. So code from category G89 may be used, so we can use it in conjunction with the codes that identify the site of the pain. Within chapter 18 of the category G89 codes provides additional informations. Okay, so here's the example. Sequencing of category codes with site-specific pain codes. Now, if the encounter is for pain control or pain management, and there's also a site-specific pain code available, code the G89 first in the site-specific pain, like M54.5, like that, your low back pain, or like for example neck pain or chronic neck pain, you need to code for G89, and you need to code for the neck pain. That is site-specific. I mean, the anatomical site is specific. The pain is specific to that anatomical site. Like for example, cervicalia or the neck pain. Okay, we need to code for the neck pain. Now, if the reason for encounter is pain control or pain management, remember in a previous guideline, code first G89. And the additional code for the site is specific. Okay. If the encounter is for another reason except for pain control, so it's no longer the pain control. Remember, you can only use that G89 as first listed if it's for pain control. So if it's not for pain control, obviously you cannot code it as first listed code. Okay? So, and a related definitive diagnosis has not been established, where the provider assigned a code for specific site pain first, followed by the category G89. It's just the opposite, guys. Okay? Pain due to devices, implants, and grafts. We will discuss that in your chapter 19 in your complications of your devices, implants, and grafts. Post-operative pain. Okay, so post-op pain. So we're talking about, remember a while ago, we can use G89 if it's post-thoracotomy, neoplasm-related pain. So the provider's documentation should be used to guide coding of post-op pain, as well as section 3 and section 4 of your patient setting guidelines. Okay. The default for post-thoracotomy and other post-op pain not specified as acute or chronic is the code for the acute form. Okay? So, excuse me. The default for post-thoracotomy and other post-op pain not specified as acute or chronic is the code for the acute form. Okay, so we will always code for the acute form, even if it's like post-thoracotomy and post-op pain. So it should always be acute or chronic. It's always coded as your acute. Okay. Routine or expected post-op pain immediately after surgery should not be coded because we are already expecting. You remember, if there's a surgery done or if there's an operations done, a surgical operation done, it is expected that the patient may suffer a post-op pain. So a post-op pain management is included in the surgery package. So we cannot bill them a separate, that is expected already. So we should not code them as a separate post-op pain because it is already expected. Okay. Post-op pain not associated with a specific post-op complication. Postoperative pain not associated with a specific post-op complication is assigned to the appropriate post-op pain code in your G89. If, like, for example, there's a pain and that pain is not associated to the surgery, okay, or to the, it's not associated as post-op complication, so we can use code for G89, specific code for G89. Okay, so you can check your category G89. That is, if the post-op pain is not associated, meaning it's not a complication of the surgery. So we need to code G89. But what if that pain is a complication of the surgery? Okay, so what should be our code? So remember, in this guideline, the pain that the post-op pain that the patient is suffering is not related at all to the surgery. So you still code the normal G89. Okay, but if the pain or the post-op pain is associated, okay, with the post or with a specific post-op complication, meaning it's already complication. Now remember, in my previous video, every time you see a complication, if it's really a complication, you need to code the complication first. And your complication code, you can see that in your chapter 19. It starts with letter T. Okay, so post-op pain associated with a specific post-op complication such as pain wire sutures is assigned to the appropriate code found in your chapter 19. And if appropriate, use additional code from G89 to identify acute or chronic pain in G89.18 or G89.30 if it's only appropriate. But most of the time, if that's the complication of your surgery, we need to use your T codes. And G89 is not a priority. It's just an additional. Okay? Chronic pain. Chronic pain is classified to subcategory G89.2. So most of the time provider would put in chronic pain only. And you don't know what should be the classified code. G89 is a subcategory, meaning you still need to code for the specific site. You need to go to greater detail in order to find the correct code under G89.2 in your book. There's no time frame defining if the pain is already chronic. So it doesn't mean that if it's already 6 months, it's considered chronic. And if it's just less than 2 days or it's just only 2 days, we consider this as acute. There's no time frame. As long as the provided documents the word chronic, you cannot question the physician or the doctor. Okay, you still code for the chronic pain because there's no time frame given in order for us to code for chronic pain. The provider's documentation should be used as a guide of these codes, of course. Okay, you always need to code of course, coding is always based on the medical records or in the documentation of the provider. Okay, neoplasm related pain. Remember the common complication of your neoplasm is, of course, your pain. That's why a lot of patients may undergo, like, for example, it's already the severe stage of cancer. They will go palliative surgery in order to no longer feel the pain. Especially if it's already stage 4, guys. The pain is really intolerable. Okay, so for neoplasm related pain, the code for this is G89.3. They're very specific with this code. G89.3 is assigned to pain document that is being related to your or associated due to your cancer, even if it's primary or secondary or just a tumor. If those are related, pain are related to those conditions, we need to code your G89.3. Okay, the code is assigned regardless whether the pain is acute or chronic. Still, even every time it's a neoplasm related, it should be G89.3. So I think you may put in a word code there right beside the guideline, G89.3. Every time you see a neoplasm related code and there's a choice in your choices, you see a G89.3, and there are choices like they don't have any G89.3, eliminate the first two that don't have G89.3 and code. Select from those two with a G89.3 code. Now the sequencing is very important. This code may be assigned as a first listed or principal when the stated reason for admission is for pain control. Remember that? It is still a part of G89. Now, if the reason for encounter is pain control or pain management, you still need to code G89.3. And also you need to code the neoplasm just to identify the whole scenario that the pain is related to your neoplasm. But what if the reason for encounter is for the neoplasm and not for the pain management or pain control? So you just twist it. Like the sequencing starts with your neoplasm, and the reason for admission encounter is for management of your neoplasm, and the pain associated with the neoplasm is also documented. Code G89.3 may be assigned as an additional diagnosis only, because remember, the main reason for the encounter is the management of the neoplasm, and it's not for the pain control. Okay, so you code for neoplasm first and your G89.3 if it is documented. That is also present. Okay? I think this is the last guideline in your chapter 6, chronic pain syndrome. I encountered a lot of this. G89.4. You can only code for the guideline here. Central pain syndrome is G89.0. And chronic pain syndrome, G89.4, are different than the term chronic pain. That's what I'm telling you guys. Because most of the time, the physician documents chronic pain. Huh? What's chronic pain? What's the G89? It's very important to, if you can query the provider to ask what's the specific site of the pain, then that's very important. You can. But like, for example, if there's no other, they put in chronic pain only, that's really a challenge for you guys. So do not use G89.4, because as I do my audit as well, they usually use G89.4 if the physician documents chronic pain only. It's really a different thing. Now G89.4 is different from G89.2, which is your chronic pain. Okay, you can only code G89.4 if it's very specific that is stated that the condition is chronic pain syndrome. And therefore, code should only be used when the provider has specifically documented this condition. So you can only code G89.4 if it is documented as chronic pain syndrome, and it's not a substitute to your chronic pain code. Okay, remember that, because I encountered a lot of those codes every time I do my audit. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so that ends your chapter 6. I'll go ahead and discuss also chapter 7 here. Diseases of the eye and Adnexa, H00 to H59. So there are two main topics that we will be discussing in your chapter 6. Chapter 7 rather, sorry. And that is your glaucoma and your blindness. Okay, hold on. I'll go back for this and I'll just prepare some of the guidelines. Hold on. Hello, I'm back. So I'll be discussing chapter 7, diseases of the eye and Adnexa. Okay, the first guideline here is your glaucoma. Okay, so assigning glaucoma codes. Okay, this is very important guideline in your chapter 7. Please highlight the bold terms there. Okay. Assign as many codes from category H4T, which is your glaucoma, as needed to identify the type of glaucoma, the affected eye, and the glaucoma stage. Okay. So what are the type of glaucomas? Like, you can Google it, you can search the type of glaucoma, but the common example is open angle glaucoma. Okay, open angle glaucoma, and we still have another example of glaucoma, but the most common is your open angle glaucoma. This is just one example of the type of glaucoma, but don't worry, guys. The provider should always document the type of glaucoma, because we cannot assume, and if there's no documentation about the type, we end up using unspecified. Okay, the affected eye. Remember, we have two eyes, the left and the right. So it's very important to code the specific laterality, if it's the right eye or the left eye. Because remember, a glaucoma may happen to your right eye only, or a glaucoma may happen to your left eye only. Okay? And the glaucoma stage. I think you have your stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3 glaucomas. The staging should always be documented by your provider. Okay? The staging. Because we have available stage for unspecified and indeterminate stage later on as we discuss your glaucoma. So by the way, what is glaucoma? Just to give you a background about glaucoma, a glaucoma is there's too much fluid builds up inside the eye. There's a fluid buildup because remember there's a blockage of the drainage of the fluid, and the pressure may build up in the eye, and it can damage your optic nerve. And your optic nerve, if it is damaged, it may result into your blindness. Just remember, it is irreversible, guys. So it's very important to treat this right away. So the common example is open angle, as I mentioned a while ago, and another one is angle closure glaucoma. Those are the type of your glaucoma. So keep in mind, when we're coding glaucoma, we need to identify the type of glaucoma, the affected eye, and the glaucoma stage, because those are the component of your codes. But sometimes we don't have the laterality, we only have the type and the stage. Okay, there are codes like that we are not specifying. I mean, there's no available options for the right and the left eye, so there are specific guidelines for that. Okay, so let's start with your next guideline. Bilateral. Okay, so we have an option about right eye, left eye, and bilateral. Okay, most of the time. So what if the patient has? Okay, keep in mind in your guideline. Okay, put a note in your guideline, bilateral glaucoma with the same type and same stage. Remember, they have the same type, which is open angle, or they also have at the same stage, which is, for example, stage 2. So if they have both type, the same type and stage, when a patient has bilateral glaucoma and both eyes are documented as being the same type and stage, and there's a code for bilateral, there's an available code for bilateral, report only the code for the type of glaucoma bilateral with a 7th character for the stage. So meaning, if we have the same type and we have the same stage, we only need to have one code only, because we have and remember, if there's an option for bilateral, so one code only if we have an option for bilateral. Okay, do not code separately the right and the left if we have a bilateral options and we are talking about the same scenario. Okay, we have the right and the left and the bilateral. Now, if it's the same type and same stage, instead of using the right and the left, use the bilateral one. Because as a rule of thumb, if there's an option about bilateral and we are talking about the same scenario in both eyes, use the bilateral code, because they don't put that bilateral option there if there's no reason at all. Okay, so the same type, the same stage, both eyes, okay, use the code for bilateral, so one code only. Okay? But what if when a patient has bilateral glaucoma and both eyes are documented as being the same type and the stage? Okay, it is same guideline, but a while ago I told you that there's an option for bilateral, so one code only. What if there's no classification? Okay, when a patient has bilateral glaucoma and both eyes are documented as being the same type and the stage, the classification does not provide a code for bilateral. So what should we do? We don't have any option of bilateral. We don't have any options about that. So as per your guideline, report only one code still for the type of glaucoma and the stage. If we don't have option about the bilateral glaucoma codes, so we will going to use the one code only for the type and one code only for the stage, as long as we have the same type and we have the same stage, still one code. Okay, but in your next guideline, what if bilateral glaucoma stage with different types or stages? It's like a rule of thumb, or it's like, common sense, that if you have a different scenario, you need to code them separately. You cannot merge them if they are not the same. Okay? Like, that's the rule of thumb. When a patient has bilateral glaucoma and each eye is documented as having different type, this is very important. Obviously, if it's a different type, you need to code them separately because we have as per the first guideline a while ago, it's differentiated based on type, stage, and the affected eye. Okay? And the classification distinguishes laterality. Assign the appropriate code for each eye rather than the code for bilateral glaucoma. So you need the code for the eye 1 and the eye 2. Now the question is, what should I code first? Since I need to code it separately, code first the eye having the higher stage or the more severe stage first. Okay? Alright, so you need, if they have different type, different stages, code them each eye. What if the same type and different stage still, even if they have the same type but they have different stage, you still need to code them separately? What if different type and same stage, still code them separately? Any of those that is different type or stage, code them separately. Now, what should I code first? The higher one or the severe one? More severe one. Okay? Should be coded first. Next, when a patient has glaucoma and each eye document is having different type and classification does not distinguish laterality, again, you still need to code each type of glaucoma. Okay? And different code for the stages. Okay? Same guideline, when the patient has bilateral glaucoma and each eye documents having the same type but different stage, still code different code for each eye if they have different stage and different type. Okay, guideline number 4. I think I encountered this when I took my risk adjustment certification. Your code for what should you do if there is an evolving or there is like the conditions having more severe now rather than compared to the condition during the admission. Now, keep in mind this guideline because this guideline is totally different when we discuss the guideline for chapter 2 for pressure ulcers. Okay, so don't forget this guideline. I think you need to put a star here. If a patient is admitted with glaucoma and the stage progresses during the admission, assign the code for the highest stage only. Okay? That's how easy it is. Now, for example, when the patient came in, it's only stage 1. But when the patient is being discharged, the stage now is stage 3. So as per your guideline, you need to code the highest stage documented only. Okay? That's your guideline. Next, we have indeterminate stage of glaucoma. Assignment of 7 character 4 for indeterminate stage. As I mentioned a while ago, we have stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, indeterminate, and we also have unspecified. When you go to your any glaucoma codes, you have an available 7 characters for this. Okay? When you go to your H40 category, it's below there. Okay? So you have your indeterminate. Now, your keywords there just highlight. You can only use indeterminate stage if it is cannot be clinically determined. There's a documentation of the provider that it is clinically undetermined before you can use your indeterminate stage, which is your 0.4 or your 7 character 4. Okay? Next, if the 7 character should not be confused with 7 character 0, unspecified, which should be assigned when there's no documentation regarding the stage of glaucoma. Remember, you can use 0.4 or your 4 rather, 7 character 4. If it's stated there, that is clinically not determined. There is a documentation that it is clinically undetermined. Unlike with your 7 character 0 unspecified, if the provider only documents glaucoma and there's no specification at all of the stage. So we may end up using your unspecified. Okay? Blindness. I think this is the last guideline for your chapter 7, blindness. If blindness or low vision of both sides documented but the visual impairment category is not documented, assign the H54.3. I'll just highlight the differences of this guideline. The first one, blindness or low vision, codes are divided based on each eye. It's easy. Are we talking about the one eye only, both eyes, or without any information at all? Okay, so the differences of these 3 codes. The first guidelines rather. The first one, if both eyes, one eye, and there's no documentation at all of one or both eyes are affected. This is your blindness guideline. Another one, the differences of these guidelines is visual impairment category is not documented. Visual impairment category is not documented. Okay, so here we don't have anything. Now, the differences of they have the same thing, impairment category. So the only differences of these guidelines are, here's both eyes, one eye, and without any information about whether both one or both eyes. So we have an option about H54.3, H54.6, and H54.7. Okay. The same thing that we may see here in this first 2 guideline is the impairment category. Okay. So this code should only be used if there's documentation of both eyes, but there's no impairment category documented. Okay. Here, one eye is affected only, and still there's no documentation of impairment category. And here, there's no documentation if the both eyes or one eye is affected. So, these are just last resort codes. Now, before using these codes, obviously you know the both eyes. Is it the left or the right eye? Now, the very important thing that you need to know here is the category, impairment category. So I think it's available in your book when you go to your H54 category. There's a category there, I think, lower right side of your book. Okay, lower right side of your book. You can see a diagram there, or a box with, you know, diagrams that will tell you about your impairment categories. I got some here. I have something here. Your blindness or low vision categories. Here is your category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 categories. Don't worry, this is in your book. It's available in your book. So, category 1, category 2, category 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we have your 9. Qualified vision loss. Category 1 and 2 is considered low vision. 3 and 4, 5 is now considered blindness. Okay? So, if there's a specification of the category, you have an available code for category 1, category 2, category 3, 4, and category 5. But if there's no specification about the impairment category, we're going to use H54.3 or H54.6 for one eye, and this is for both eyes. Okay, I hope that's clear with you guys, because these are new guidelines about your blindness. So there's an available categories that we may select when we go through those subcategories of your ICD-10 codes. Okay? I think that ends up your chapter 7, your eyes and your Adnexa. Let's proceed with your chapter 8, diseases of the ear and mastoid process. As you can see in your book and in your guideline, there's no available guidelines about diseases of the ear and the mastoid process. I'll just go over with those codes categories that we have. Your codes in your chapter 8 is divided based on your anatomy. Okay, the outer ear, the middle ear, and the inner ear. Remember that. Based on your anatomy, we have your outer ear, the middle ear, and the inner ear. That's how your codes are being divided. When you go to H60, H62, we're talking about the external ear. Okay, like otitis media, disorders of the pinna, or other conditions. Next category, H65 to H75, we're talking about the middle ear or the mastoid. So, common example of the conditions that you may see there, otitis media, perforation of tympanic membrane, and polyps of the middle ear. And the last one, category H80 to H83, contains codes for diseases of the inner ear. Okay? So that ends your chapter 6, chapter 7, and chapter 8. Up next, I'll be discussing your chapter 9, which I love to discuss. Chapter 9, diseases of your circulatory systems. Okay, and they love to ask as well in the actual exam. Okay? So guys, if you're new to my channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified every time I have my new upload. So thank you for the support. Thank you for the overwhelming feedback that I'm receiving. Thank you so much, and happy coding. And good luck to your studies. Thank you.